Just say no. If you grew up during the 80s, you're likely familiar with this expression. Coined by First Lady Nancy Reagan in 1982, just say no became a key phrase of government anti-drug efforts. And on the surface, it sounds like simple enough advice. If someone offers you drugs, just say no, and you'll be fine. It can even seem easy to wonder why more people don't simply say these 3 words. Unfortunately, reality, much like addiction, is a bit more complicated. Here's why just say no doesn't work and why it's not a good way to approach addiction treatment. A closer look at just say no. The idea behind Just Say No is that it's supposed to encourage people, particularly teenagers, to reject peer pressure. The phrase was the chief inspiration behind the DARE program. DARE stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, which was a program founded in 1983 by the Los Angeles Police Department and the LA Unified School District. At its peak, 75% of schools in the US districts were involved in the DARE program. While DARE is still around, time has raised questions about its effectiveness. Studies as far back as 1992 found the program seemed to be ineffective. In fact, many studies showed that the students in DARE programs were actually more likely to engage in substance abuse. And that's probably why the programs lost federal funding in 1988. So, why was DARE so ineffective? Many researchers seem to think it's due to a lack of social interaction. Successful anti-drug programs tend to teach children social skills like having to act out interactions between drug dealers and them. Also, successful anti-drug programs emphasize that substance use is uncommon, which means most people won't think they're weird because they abstain from drug use. Finally, effective anti-drug programs tend to last for years. DARE programs mostly take place over months, don't really emphasize social skills other than telling kids to just say no, and often underplay the risk of drug addictions like alcohol and nicotine in favor of emphasizing the threats of harder drugs like cocaine and heroin. Back to just say no. Good intentions don't always make for a good policy. There's a few reasons why just say no doesn't work very well. First, just say no can be countered with a very simple question: why? Most anti-drug programs we run into during our adolescence don't really focus on why avoiding drug use is so important. They don't mention how harmful drug use can be on the developing brains, or how addiction can ruin a person's life quickly, or even how the brain can heal itself once drug and alcohol abuse stops. Instead, we're just told that just saying no is enough. Secondly, just say no doesn't always match up with what people see. So high-functioning substance abuse is a real thing, and unfortunately many people manage to keep up appearances in active addiction, although most can't do it forever. It's hard to tell someone to just say no when their own experience seems to show that it's possible to live a normal life while engaging in substance abuse. Finally, DARE and other Just Say No programs were offered to kids whose brain were still developing. The human brain tends to develop up into our mid-20s, and the areas of the brain involved in self-control and decision-making tend to be the last to develop. Telling someone to just say no when they're in the prime age of risky behavior seems a little unrealistic. So, what can we do instead? Argument for harm reduction. One of the biggest trends in the recovery world is the concept of harm reduction. So harm reduction is the principle of making the social and physical consequences of drug use as minimal as possible. Needle exchanges are a great example of harm reduction. Giving people engaged in IV drug use clean needles to use sounds like a way to excuse their addiction, but in reality, it's a highly effective way of reducing bloodborne diseases like hepatitis C and HIV. At the Edge Treatment Center, we're big believers in drug replacement therapy. This means giving a person struggling with opioid abuse medications that act similarly to the drugs they're abusing. Drug replacement helps a person resist drug cravings and withdrawal symptoms, meaning they're much more present in therapy and much more likely to eventually enter a life in recovery free from all drug use. Finally, just say no is a phrase that's loaded with stigma. Drug abuse doesn't mean a person is evil. Most often, a person who uses drugs is trying to self-medicate for trauma or other mental disorders. Drug users need help, not condemnation. It's commendable to convince teens and other people to never try drugs. Believe me, I see how harmful drug use is regularly, and if I were an advocate for drug use, I wouldn't be in this business. But going to convince people how dangerous substance abuse is, we're going to need to dig a little deeper than just telling people to say no. The Edge Treatment Center, effective, evidence-based care for drug addiction if you feel like drug addiction is taking over your life or the life of someone you care about, the situation is not hopeless. The Edge uses cutting-edge, proven techniques to help people free themselves from addiction. If you'd like to learn more about our program, reach out to the Edge Treatment Center today at 844-590-0403.